the US regulatory authority SEC just said something incredible. In other words, they're basically saying, yeah, okay, we're going to let the Bitcoin price pump up to at least $9 million US. They're giving the green light. They're confirming something very, very important for Bitcoin here. Michael Saylor has also spoken about this here many times. Let's take a look at what this is all about. Russia is now going completely wild, and the central bank is now ready to conduct international trade with Bitcoin, meaning international settlements, after yesterday's huge announcement from Sberbank that they want to offer Bitbonds. Bank of America is also saying that the current uncertainties in trade conflicts will lead to Bitcoin rising massively this summer. Asset manager VanEck is talking about how nations are now starting to engage in Bitcoin mining to bypass the sanctions of the International Monetary Fund. How crazy is that, guys? We have new massive purchases. And once again, new companies are building on Bitcoin. Now we have a shocking statement from the Federal Reserve, talking about a potential interest rate shock. So it's really crazy what's happening here again. But first, you need to hit the like button here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe now, because the crazy thing is, the cognitive dissonance around Bitcoin right now is higher than ever before. These videos really need to be broadcast. The YouTube algorithm needs to push it, so you have to like it now. I mean, just check this out. Comments like this keep popping up here. You can really see where we currently stand with Bitcoin. We're still at the very beginning. Just take a look at this. Someone wrote, please don't say anything. Every time you say something, the Bitcoin price drops. First of all, I have to say, as I'm recording this video, the Bitcoin price is actually up about 0.6% today. Since I launched the YouTube channel, which was probably somewhere around 16 or 17,000, I don't even remember exactly. Bitcoin has gone up by almost 100%, you could say roughly. But what some people, for example, don't get is that they watch videos, and then the Bitcoin price drops or something, and they basically conclude, okay, because this video came out, that's why the Bitcoin price fell. But you also have to understand that most of the time, Bitcoin either does nothing or goes down, either it moves sideways or it drops. There are only a very few days, maybe 10 days, when Bitcoin really shoots up and breaks out, and people draw all kinds of conclusions from that. Yeah, every time a video comes out, the Bitcoin price goes down. Here, causality and correlation are clearly being mixed up, and it just shows how big the cognitive dissonance is in this case. I don't understand how people can be so narrow-minded, always staring at an hourly chart, and then they're surprised when Bitcoin drops. Zoom out, people. Just relax. But now let's dive in, because some really intense things have happened here. I just wanted to clarify that, because things like this really show that we're still so early. We could go through tons of examples right now, but that would just be a waste of time. We see James Wynn, the 40x long trader, who got completely wiped out, but now he's extremely bullish on Bitcoin, saying the bears will get liquidated, and even people who write comments like these will all get liquidated. He says here that a Bitcoin price breakout is inevitable. We have new companies here, like the blockchain group from France, which just bought another 624 Bitcoin, nearly 60.2 million. Here, the best performing company in Europe, or in France, with a BTC return of over 1,000%, now has over 1,000 Bitcoin. And yes, these aren't as big as MicroStrategy's purchases, but every company counts here. Every Bitcoin that gets taken out of the supply here is one less Bitcoin that the bratwurst host can still afford, and eventually he's going to wake up and realize that Bitcoins have become too expensive, and he'll regret not getting into this topic sooner. Here we see the next company that's now buying Bitcoin. Publicly traded, Swedish company, Green Merrick. No one's ever heard of them. I've never heard of them in my life. But everyone is getting into Bitcoin. Everyone is shopping for Bitcoin. Everyone wants to be part of this. Now we have here pro-Bitcoin presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung, who just won the South Korean election and is also a Bitcoiner. He has promised to legalize ETFs and invest state pensions in Bitcoin, meaning that retirement funds or pension funds will be invested in Bitcoin. By the way, yesterday I also mentioned that the Russian president wants to introduce a strategic Bitcoin reserve and is pro-Bitcoin. Some people commented underneath, saying they were from Poland and that he's actually not that Bitcoin friendly. Of course, I'm not from Poland myself. I just got this information from the news. If this was reported incorrectly, then of course it needs to be corrected. So yes, I want to thank you for the correction. But honestly, I don't know for sure either. Feel free to let me know in the comments below. Is it really the case in Poland that he is pro-Bitcoin? I don't know the presidential candidate in detail. So please let me know below if he really is pro-Bitcoin, or if this was actually fake news. And Russia is also moving quickly now, one thing after another. Just yesterday, we had Sberbank, which now wants to offer Bitbonds in Russia. And now we have the Russian Central Bank, which wants to check together with with the Agricultural Bank, which must also be a Russian bank, whether it's possible for them to settle grain exports in Bitcoin. And that's pretty intense, of course, that the US still hasn't caught on to Bitcoin and still hasn't bought any Bitcoin. while on the other hand, Russia is really gearing up massively for Bitcoin. So I think that's pretty wild, especially what happened with the Bitbonds yesterday. I found that really intense. Max Kaiser also retweeted a statement about this, saying that everyone just has their own Bitcoin strategy. And of course, nations are trying to accumulate Bitcoin or bring it into their country in some way, without openly waving the Bitcoin flag or publicly announcing, okay, we're buying a ton of Bitcoin now, because that could trigger FOMO. So maybe with things like Bitbonds, or by doing international settlements with Bitcoin, or by taking other actions, they can get into Bitcoin without making a big public show of it. That's just a theory. It doesn't have to be true, but of course, it's possible. We have Robinhood, which wants to keep scaling as a crypto exchange, and they've now acquired Bitstamp for $200 million. Robinhood is also a hugely commercial platform. That means we have more and more large commercial platforms that are expanding their Bitcoin offerings. We have Bank of America, which is also ramping things up and saying, hey, trade tensions will lead to Bitcoin skyrocketing this summer. Bull market, just getting started. Buckle up, this could get really crazy. And we can clearly see that the big players, the institutional investors, they get it. But a lot of regular people still just don't understand. I say this so often in my videos, but I really can't say it enough, because it's just a fact and it's really important to take this to heart. And now, let's take a look at the Federal Reserve. Yesterday, Jerome Powell also gave a speech. He didn't really say much about the current monetary policy just yet. You couldn't really tell from his speech whether interest rates are going up or down or anything like that. But now there's a new statement, and here we see that Fed member Bostic says he's in no hurry to adjust the Federal Reserve's key interest rate. Bostic sees a possible path to a rate cut in 2025 and is very cautious when it comes to lowering rates too soon. The Fed's long pause is going to last even longer, so these are actually more bearish statements here. We, or at least many people, always want interest rates to be lowered, for QE to take place, and so on, so that the markets get pumped with even more liquidity and risk assets can break out to the upside. But this is more of a warning signal, where they're saying, hey, no, there's uncertainty. This is also what Jerome Powell has said many times. The tariffs could very well lead to another surge in inflation. And because of that, they want to have a safety buffer and aren't ready to lower interest rates just yet. In my opinion, that's actually a negative statement. But now let's take a look at the SEC, because they're extremely bullish here. They're now confirming what Michael Saylor has been talking about for a very long time. And here's Hester Pearson in an interview with CNBC, where she talks about one of the most significant Bitcoin price catalysts and confirms it once again.
Yeah, well, first of all, it wasn't even a rule, and I think that was one problem, that it didn't go through the normal process. It was just a pronouncement. And what that pronouncement did is it said that lots of traditional entities that would have done custody for crypto, practically speaking, could not participate in providing custody for crypto. And so what we're trying to do with eliminating ESAB 121 is to say, if you have experience in custody, you can come into this space. It's not to say that entities that are crypto native and want to provide custody that they can't do it, but it's really to say we want to have as broad a pool as possible of potential custodians. That's what's best for the safety of people's assets.
And that's a statement that, in my opinion, a lot of people completely overlook or don't really interpret correctly what she just said here. But what she's saying here is so essential, because she's saying that they want to expand custodian services here in the US, so that people who are willing to provide custody, like banks, brokers, and so on, are all allowed to offer custody services. She's talking here about the SCP 121 regulation, which was suspended quite some time ago, and that was basically what prevented people, banks, and so on from holding Bitcoin on their balance sheets. And that's the big lever. If, for example, Bitcoin can be used as collateral, and so on. Michael Saylor also said that this is one of the 3 conditions for Bitcoin to rise to 9 million, if these 3 conditions are met. Abolishing SCP-121, fair value accounting, and then Bitcoin ETFs, or as he said, if banks are allowed to hold Bitcoin. That's basically one condition. And for that, SCP-121 has to be abolished. But she's actually taking it a step further here. She says here, hey, they want to expand custody services here. And this really stands in stark contrast, because I always say, get your Bitcoin into self-custody. Yes, get your Bitcoin into self-custody. I'll also put a link down below again to address her hardware wallet, because that's the only way you have censorship-resistant money. With a bank, your money can disappear at any time. That means, I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing for the Bitcoin space in general if all the banks start offering custody and then, in the end, no one holds their own coins anymore. Of course, that's terrible for Bitcoin, but in the short or medium term, it's definitely very good for the Bitcoin price. And you have to make a distinction here. This isn't my personal opinion that it's absolutely great that we're heading in this direction. But honestly, you just have to admit that this is going to be a massive price catalyst. And yeah, sooner or later, it was kind of inevitable that Wall Street would come, that the banks would come, that the hedge funds would come, and so on. Now they're all here, and now they want to get into custody services too. And yeah, you just have to educate people and say, hey, okay, you can lend out your Bitcoin, you can use your Bitcoin with custody services, but you always have third-party risks with that. So, it's really a double-edged sword. And then we actually have VanEck, who are dropping a real bombshell here. Check this out. In the background here, Bitcoin mining is happening to bypass the IMF.
The biggest change is, again, the government shift. And let's move outside the US. A number of countries who are mining Bitcoin at the central government level. This was 2 countries in 2021. El Salvador became the 3rd. In 2024, we had 3 new countries join the club. All of them have debt deals with the IMF. So you start to scratch your head here. Like, what do they have in common? They are tired of this never-ending cycle of debt that has been facilitated by the IMF, this extend and pretend where countries lose their sovereignty. So all 3 countries last year, Kenya, Ethiopia, Argentina, who are now mining Bitcoin, with government resources, they had IMF deals. And look at the countries this year, Pakistan, another country with an IMF.
And that's very, very exciting. That's really incredibly exciting. He's saying here that all the countries being oppressed by the International Monetary Fund. I've reported on this several times myself. Recently, Pakistan is being oppressed, El Salvador is being oppressed, and all of them are engaging in Bitcoin mining to basically build up their Bitcoin reserves. It might also be interesting to dive deeper into that, because El Salvador adds a new Bitcoin to their Bitcoin wallet every day, and maybe it's not that they're buying those Bitcoins, but that they're actually coming from Bitcoin mining, since officially they're not allowed to buy any more Bitcoin. It would really make a lot of sense to take a closer look at that. That might be an interesting approach here, but in any case, it's really awesome that more and more countries, people are talking about Ethiopia, Kenya, and yeah, Pakistan, El Salvador, and so on, that more and more countries are joining in, and that these countries are also increasingly able to bypass sanctions, which is kind of like a life hack. But hey, let me know in the comments below how you assess the current situation. If you don't have any Bitcoin yet, then I recommend you check out 21 Bitcoin now. You can easily download the app there. In the App Store, you can enter the code Bitcoin Hotel and get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Here, you get great fees and super easy handling. Here you can place one-time orders, limit orders, set up auto transfers to your own wallet, savings plans, and much more. Absolute recommendation. Be sure to stop by. See you guys. See you then. Peace out.